Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Comix Rant Mini. I'm your host, Arvin Bautista, and we are going to talk about 0 Hour 30th Anniversary Special number 1 by Dan Jurgens, and Ron Mars writing the script with a whole army of awesome 90s DC artists and great colors. I guess there's only one guy, Alex Sinclair, maybe a team of other people, but it looks great. It's if you are a 90s kid, 90s DC kid like me, then this will definitely appeal to you. 30-year anniversary is a little scary for in terms of thinking about my age. But this is like some fun stuff. I think it was when I was first going into college. Yeah. So maybe my freshman year of college. Is that right? Something like that. Senior year, high school, freshman year of college, something like that. I still remember because I was reminded that Starman, actually one of my favorite books, by the way, regardless, whatever it was, DC, Marvel, whatever, indie, Starman is such a fantastic book, and I was hooked on this book around that time, and I had forgotten that he was tied into this 0 Hour crossover, right? This giant, very galactic universe spanning crisis style crossover. And 0 Hour, I remember reading it back then. I wasn't really that into it, to be honest. It was like a crossover that just felt like it was a crossover, after Crisis, and Legends and all that kind of stuff. So at that point, I didn't really appreciate it. It's not like it's changed. It's just now my view of that crossover helps me to understand why it kind of was there. So anyway, there's like a lot of these little tiny continuity things that DC still wanted to clean up. And this was the crossover that did it in. It also introduced some new characters taking over. So one of them, so leading up to that was Hal Jordan going bad. So all these things going on. Hal Jordan going bad, becoming a super cosmic scale bad guy, and Green Lantern Corps getting all destroyed. And then this character gets introduced. So this is kind of a big deal because it's Kyle Rayner, Green Lantern, who still exists now, but this was kind of like where he kind of took over as the new Green Lantern, basically. And they do a good job in this book to kind of represent that time period. So I have been enjoying all these crazy nostalgia trips from DC. Again, I'm a DC fan, so I really liked seeing all these old artists and writers kind of come back to these storylines. Whoever came up with it seemed like it was pretty natural thing to do, but I like that it's still going. So I'm talking a little bit ahead. So I kind of got into these kind of nostalgia books from the death of Superman. So I have I may have missed some other nostalgia book that they did that's kind of this format, but Death of Superman, The Return of Superman, and then now it's 0 Hour so far that I have in my collection. And the genius of these books is it's all the old art teams, all the old writing teams. Was it all the old editorial stuff? No, it's not all the old editorial stuff. But even the colorists, I think Glenn Whitmore, I think I remember that name. They might still just be working in the industry. But all the old teams are back together again to kind of put a new story within the existing story that everybody is nostalgic about and remembers. So it's not just a reprint of those stories, it's new stories within that time. And the cool part is Dan Jurgens has been using the modern DC continuity to kind of set all these stories in. So we have, Superman's kid and he's married to Lois Lane, but they're nostalgic about Superman dying before he was married, right? Before all these things going on, before he had a kid. And then they'll introduce a new version of this character from back in the day. So there's like a kind of a new Doomsday that kind of makes sense. He's tied into the story. And I thought it was really, really well done. So I think that's why this first book was a great pitch for all these other books coming through. And Dan Jurgens is the one that was able to pull it together. Dan Jurgens has been around for ages. I think he was writing Avengers books too, like before he kind of like shot it big in Superman. And he still wrote like one of my favorite revisits of Superman in the New 52. So he still has the juice. He's writing a Batman book, Black Label. He's all over the place. Nowadays, he's still working and still writing. So he's the perfect person to kind of bring all these things together. And I think the man has a lot of pull at DC. He was kind of there for Death of Superman. So he's kind of big. But then they'll also have these short stories. This was cool. That is set in that time period. So now we get to see how Ma and Pa Kent were reacting to the news happening and all this kind of stuff. And it's by those teams that were drawing those books at that time, which is extra nostalgic. And then we have pinups of modern artists in between. It's a really well put together book. Walter Simonson doing his stuff. Jackson Geiss, right? Or Butch Geiss, whichever one. Butch Geiss, all right. I think he is Jackson Geiss as well. But, it's new stuff for them to do. So I think as a freelance artist currently, I am super appreciative of these old artists getting all this work, old writers, old artists, right? And I'm more than happy to pay it's like $10 book. It's an $11 book. How about that? $11. But we get like John Bogdanov, Louise Simonson writing, going back and trying to filling in some of these gaps. And the best part is because it's a short story, they're not trying to add more crazy action or adventure. So it becomes more in-depth, right? Now that I'm older, now that the generation that read this is older, you can appreciate the human stories that are happening as Superman is dying. And I appreciate those stories too, even after, during that time in the 90s when they would focus on human stories. We'll have pinups by Gabriel Rodriguez, who did Lock and Key, I believe. So it's kind of cool to see these artists Fabio Moon was on here, I think. Did I just flip through one of those? Sienkiewicz, Fabio Moon right there, right? Like some of these artists that you would not really have on a Superman book. Jamal Campbell, I think he is on a Superman book. But just really well done. So anyway, I'm gushing about this book and this episode's about 0 Hour. Anyway, so you can kind of see why these books kind of led so naturally into this one. So this is also some of the people from these books, to be honest with you. Dan Jurgens, again, I think is doing it. Ron Mars is writing with him. But then, okay, I'm not sure if I actually went through this yet, but, we'll get Darryl Banks, who was the artist for this Green Lantern run. And I think he was also there for the Emerald Twilight stuff where Hal Jordan goes bad. Kelly Jones was, I believe, drawing Batman at that time. So it's kind of cool that he gets to do this part of the story. This is not a mistake that these teams are being assigned here. And then we get Tom Grummett doing Superman, I believe, the Superman title at that time. So he's handling the Supergirl version of this universe. And then, we get nice characters like the Ray showing up. Jerry Ordway, who I'm a giant fan of. I need to do like an episode just with his stuff. Giant fan of this guy. Super happy to see him handling this stuff with the JSA, because he was kind of Infinity Inc. JSA kind of dude. And at least that's what is in my head. He is my Superman artist. That's canon Superman along there with Kurt Swan. And, he gets to handle the Legion. He has a pretty cool splash page here with Obsidian, which is this guy. And it's this stuff, assigning these art teams here. He gets to draw a pretty sweet Parallax. And then we get Paul Peltier, who I believe also took over the Green Lantern book with Kyle Rayner in it. So, and he's drawn all sorts of things. I think he's also been on Marvel books before his DC run. He may be back there again. I'm not sure. But it's these guys that I was reading in the 90s. And it's kind of really great to see them back. Howard Porter is drawing here. So he became big with Justice League stuff in the 90s with Grant Morrison stuff. I was never actually into his stuff, but he is a hardworking man and I really respect his work. And this is, I think, my favorite work of his. I don't know why, but it's like this kind of looser, look. I kind of really like it. Very kinetic. I'm not sure who was inking. He may have been inking himself back in the Justice League days. This is just all him. So, now that we have digital technology, he doesn't really have to be inked by another inker. He can just do his own. And I kind of like this look. It's kind of like this kind of scratch. That's a cool face. It's scratchier, kinetic look. And this kind of won me over. I was like, all right, Howard Porter is the man. It's like his drawing of this 90s character, Wave Rider, and he looks super cool here. And then the last part of the book is by Dan Jurgens and Brett Breeding doing the inks. And this is totally 0 hour 90s right here. This kind of effect that he puts back in here and, everything. The way that he's inked, all that kind of stuff just throws me way, way back. And, I'm just super happy by the end of this book to see these characters kind of back, like Guy Gardner Warrior, where he kind of lost his ring and he had this weird biosynthetic armor, or I don't know. Someone can fact check me on that, no problem. I will defer to internet. But Jack Knight actually plays a little role in it, and it's kind of cool because he's a down-to-earth character, so he's not really the type that kind of pops up in these cosmic things. And it's kind of weird to see him pop up in these cosmic things, but as a fan, it is nice. And then, they have a little... Sorry, there are a lot of spoilers in this video, so... Parallax is back. So, it's a way to kind of, get the old readers into... following along some of the storylines that they still remember, with nostalgia pulling there, and it's totally on full force. This is what this book is for. But I love that it's not a reprint. I love those reprints too. They look fantastic, by the way. They have these crazy foil embossed covers. But I like that it's still a lot of work for all these teams to put this book together, but still deliver on and add and capitalize on that nostalgia that everybody's trying to capture right now, because we are a dying breed. US comic book superhero readers are a dying breed, and the market's always changing and so on. So it's kind of nice to get these books. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? I have no idea. I'm just, I have no real social or economic commentary tied to these books. It's just I am enjoying them. So I will buy them. This pinup is cool. So these pinups are pretty cool that I just showed you. This is Dennis Cowan doing, I think he did some of the Batman books. John Bogdanov was on Man of Steel. And so he kind of gets to do a little pinup here. That's actually relevant. These pinups are all relevant to what's going on in the story. So even these pinups are made new for this book, I believe. Starman, Tony Harris is the man. I love his stuff. So it's kind of cool to see him back doing Starman stuff. I'm sure they've all moved on, right? Robinson and him, and they've done other great things. But it, pull on my heartstrings here. Rick Leonardi, we got Chris Sprouse doing some of this Legion stuff. This is great stuff. So, Nicholas Scott. So one of the newer artists for DC is doing the Trinity. This universe, this multiverse's Trinity. And it's nice that all this stuff is still within the DC universe, DC multiverse, right? So you're not just feeling like you're disassociated from what's going on. These things will still kind of trickle through, especially if the fans show up for these storylines in these books. And, as an old fogey, it's nice that it's not a series. I will gladly pay $10 for, I don't even know, what is this, 80 pages worth of a nostalgia blast. Happy to support it. I think it would be different if it was a limited series that had to kind of show up every month. It's just not that easy anymore. But it was really fun. So if that kind of grabs you, go to your local comic book store. 0 Hour 30th Anniversary Special #1 is on sale. I just picked this up because I'm late on my pull lists, but it was very fun. And you guys got to see like what was going on here. Sorry if there were too many spoilers, but it is worth it. Worth it to be in your collection if you are a nostalgia nerd like me. Anyway, that's it for this episode. I will see you guys next time on Comix Rant.